up there with the Hornets, and Huntsville is my number 2 pick. And my black horse pick is Crosby. Crosby's a school that, that maybe not considered great. They aren't ranked, but they have a great young quarterback. And it's just like in the pros or college. In high school, well, if you have a playmaking quarterback, you can do a lot of great things. And I think with their Reggie Branch, if they get him going in the playoffs, they can advance a few rounds, and that's my dark horse. But Marshall, I think, is the class of 5A Division II down here in the Houston area.
You mentioned Huntsville, number 4 in the state in the rankings. They've got a tough path, though, because they're likely to match up with number 5 Texarkana Texas High early on in the playoff bracket. So it's not going to be an easy path to get out of Region 3 by any means. Let's head down to San Antonio as we get our top 2 picks and a dark horse from each of these guys from around the state as we try and prognosticate the 5A Division II bracket for you guys. Joe Reinigal down in San Antonio. Joe, who do you see coming out of your region?
Well, good to see you, Mike. And I tell you what, we've got some great football down here in San Antonio. Seems to get better. But I've picked the Alamo Heights Mules to come out of Division II and 5A, and there's a number of reasons for that. Number one, they got hot at the right time. They lost a couple of ball games early on, but they went 5-0 in district. Their head coach is a guy by the name of Ron Ritteman. He started the program at San Antonio Johnson High School, built that up, came over to Alamo Heights as the head coach and the athletic director. But here's the kicker on all of this. These guys played not one home game this year. Their stadium is being remodeled. Their practice fields are being remodeled. So they were kind of vagabonds, if you will, all season long and still managed to get it done. So Alamo Heights is the team that I have coming out. But there's another team up the road about 20 miles from San Antonio called Bernie. It's Champion High School there, and the only team that they lost to in the district was the Alamo Heights Mules. They have got a defense that is just solid as a rock. Their defense only gave up an average, get this, of 7 points a ball game. That's incredible. They pitched 3 shutouts this year, so they're good. Now, my dark horse for Division II out of this region is a team by the name of Medina Valley. And they're just a little bit southwest of San Antonio. But this team has really been a Jekyll and Hyde. But when they put it together and they're playing good football, they can play with anybody. So obviously their hope is that they can put it together at the right time. We'll wait and see. But I think if they're playing good football, you got to deal with them.
Joe, I love it, and I find it interesting that each of those 3 teams from the same district says a lot about the depth of that district, that those 3 teams have got real playoff potential this year. This is the Tegna Texas High School Roundtable on YouTube and Facebook channels all around the state of Texas, Tegna stations all around the state. We go to Jeff Jones now in Austin. He covers the high school scene down there. And Jeff, it looks like anyway in Region 4 that there's only one team that is kind of head and shoulders above the rest. Liberty Hill, the only ranked team in the state in that region.
Yeah, Liberty Hill looks fantastic, and they've looked that way since really before Game 1. Preseason, we knew that this was going to be a team that made some noise, and what makes this Liberty Hill team very interesting, there are a few things, but the one thing that jumps out to me right off the bat is this is their first year in 5A. They moved up from 4A, and they have been dominant running the slot T offense. It's a strange offense. It's based on misdirection and really based on having 3 or 4 running backs who can carry the load. Let me tell you exactly how good they've been recently. Their past 5 games, all wins, they're 8-0 this season, but their past 5 games in particular, they won 76-0, 86-0, 42-0, 40-7, and 84-0. Now, their level of competition hasn't always been the best, but they've done what they're supposed to do against teams that they're better than. They've dominated, and they also suffered tragedy recently. Exactly 1 week ago today, their head coach, Jeff Walker, passed away following an 8-year battle with cancer. So these guys are bigger, stronger, faster, better than every other team that they played so far, and now they're entering the playoffs with extra emotions. Expect Liberty Hill to do something special. My number 2 team coming out of Central Texas in the 5A Division II lineup would be Rouse. The Rouse Raiders are a team that went from worst to first. Last year, they had the worst record in their district, 1-9. This year, they're sitting at 8-1 and they're district champs. The best story I have for you about Rouse, though, has to do with their sophomore quarterback, Mason Shorb. 5 years ago, when Mason was in 5th grade, he bumped into the Rouse head coach, Joshua Mann, in Target or HEB or something, and he said to him, Coach, soon I'm going to be your starting quarterback, and we're going to win a whole lot of games. as you can tell, Mason was right. And Mason, if you're watching, hit me up on Twitter at Jeff Jones Sports. I need the lotto numbers for this week's big time drawing, all right? And our dark horse coming out of Central Texas, we're going to go with Marble Falls. They run a similar offense to Liberty Hill. Half the Marble Falls coaches used to coach at Liberty Hill. It's that slot team. Many high school coaches haven't seen it, so basically no high school players have seen it until you prepare for a team like Liberty Hill or Marble Falls. That could help the Mustangs from Marble Falls come playoff time.
And Jeff, you talk about Liberty Hill and Leander Rouse. If they both win through, that would set up a regional semifinal matchup that could be awfully juicy down there in Region 4. Meanwhile, here in DFW, there are two clear-cut favorites, and you could argue they are the two clear-cut favorites across the state in 5A Division 2. They're the number one and number 2 teams in the state in this division. Number 1, Ennis, 8-0 on the year. Sam Harrell's club has been fantastic offensively and defensively all season long. A dominant program in so many ways this season. Colin Drake leads a very potent offense, averaging 54 points per game. They won't have an easy run through the playoffs, though. They're going to get matched up with, most likely anyway, a very talented, formerly state-ranked Mansfield Timberview team in the second round. Number 2, Aledo, the 2-time defending state champions, of course, always a threat in 5A D2, going for a 10th state championship this year. They're not as good maybe as last year's team, but they're still very, very good. JoJo Earl, BJ Allen, they've got talent all over the football field, and they're going to be dangerous in the postseason. Lucas Lovejoy, my dark horse coming out of this area. This is a team with R.W. Rucker at the helm that is just a gritty football team. R.W. Rucker is a football player in every sense of the word. Offensively, defensively, gets the job done. That's a scary team. And also keep an eye on South Oak Cliff coming out of this region as well. They could challenge Aledo once again. All right, fellas, let's go around the state now. Big picture. Who is your state champion in 5A D2?
Whoa, this is going to be tough, but I got to go with the area team, right? Marshall gets close on a regular basis. I'm going to pick Marshall.
So, Matt Musil, say that one more time. Who'd you end up going with?
I'm going to go local. I'm going to go with Fort Bend Marshall. These guys are there on a regular basis. They're on the cusp. I'm going to pick them to win it.
How about you, Jeff Jones?
You know, if Matt can go local, I'm going to go local as well. These guys at Liberty Hill, they have an advantage every week because that strange offense is hard to prepare for. And like I said a moment ago, they're emotionally fired up to win this one for their late coach. Liberty Hill, they're going to win it all.
Joe Reinigal, who's your state champ in 5A D2?
Yeah, Mike, I'm going to go with Jeff there. I like Liberty Hill. I just think they're the team to beat this year. They're on a run. They've got that emotional advantage, I think, that they're going to need. And I like Liberty Hill. Great minds think alike, Jeff. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying, Joe.
Liberty Hill and some of these other teams. Liberty Hill and some of these other teams have got maybe an easier path to the state title game. I do think, though, if Ennis can indeed come out of Region 2, that team is stacked and loaded, and I do have them winning state in 5A D2. So far, we're all pretty much riding the homer train. We'll see if that changes here in 5A Division 1, where Region 2 is an absolute gauntlet. 5 of the top 10 teams in the state. Matt Musil, we'll come to you first in the Houston area. Who you got in 5A D1?
Well, it's like you say, it's just jammed up with talent down here, and I've got to go with Manville. You know, Manville was hurting there a little bit for a couple of years. Shadow Creek came along in that Alvin ISD, but don't forget the starting quarterback at the University of Miami is a Manville product. The starting quarterback at Florida is a Manville quarterback. Gabriel Larry is the latest in great quarterbacks out of Manville, and he's got a great receiver in Jalen Whitehall. I picked Manville to win this Division I in Class 5A, and Magnolia, they've got a tremendous running back, Magnolia, Mitch Hall, that this guy can do just about anything. He'll run past you, he'll run through you, and I'm picking them for that's my number 2 pick. They're coming out of Region 2. And my dark horse out of 5A Division area is Foster. Foster's loaded with talent, had another very good season, and I'll go with Foster with my dark horse. They're just loaded with talent in Class 5A Division 1 here, Mike.
Yeah, and Matt, that Magnolia team you're talking about got slotted into Region 2, which only makes their path that much more difficult. 5 of the top 10 teams in the state are in that region alone. Yep. Let's go to Joe Reinigle in San Antonio. Who's your favorite coming out of 5A in Division 1?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to leave San Antonio and go about 2 hours south to Corpus Christi Veterans Memorial. That team is absolutely loaded, offensively especially. These guys are incredible. They're averaging about 50 points a game, and they've got a pretty good defense at that, but they are just loaded offensively. So I like Corpus Christi Veterans Memorial to win the region in Division 1. My second team, I'm going to come back home, and I'm going to play that emotion card again. I'm going to go with the San Antonio Brackenridge Eagles. Their coach, a guy by the name of Willie Hall, is retiring after 25 years. He's been with the school, though, for 37 years. He's retiring, and these guys have been on a mission to win it for him, and they've done well. They won their district, and they're ready and primed for the playoffs. I like the Brackenridge Eagles to make some noise coming out of there. Dark horse-wise, I couldn't decide. I got a couple of them. We got a team on the very far south side of San Antonio called the Southside Cardinals. I like them. They are unbeaten, undefeated. Kind of a weak district, though, so we'll have to see when they get into some better competition. And the New Braunfels Canyon Cougars, they're loaded as well. So I've got 2 there. I couldn't decide, guys. Sorry. I had to go with 2.
Well, Southside's in the top half of that Region 4 bracket, which looks to be wide open, so they may have an opportunity, Joe, to make a little bit of a run in this postseason. All right, let's head to Jeff Jones down at KVU in Austin. Jeff, 5AD1, who's your pick?
You know, here in Austin, there is a clear 5A team that has just been amazing, especially on offense, and that is Cedar Park. Guys, one of the favorite stats that I have so far this season comes from the Timberwolves team. Their offense has 3 wide receivers who have 500 or more yards receiving and 6 or more touchdowns. Their quarterback, Ryder Hernandez, has thrown for 34 touchdowns and 0 interceptions this season. They're undefeated, 8-0 this year. They look like they are poised to make a deep, deep run, and I don't want to ruin my pick for later, but I expect to see a big trophy coming back to Cedar Park. They play in the same district as a Georgetown team that only has 1 loss on the season, and it came against Cedar Park. Now, what separates Georgetown from other teams that I've seen this year is how much fun they have, especially on offense. They've drawn up all these great trick plays. Coach Chuck Griffin drew up this awesome, hook and ladder that had an option pitch between 2 wide receivers off of it. He told us after the game that he's been practicing that play with his teams every Thursday for the past 15 years. So they're keeping it fun, they're keeping it light, and as long as we're talking about impressive offense, let's move on to my dark horse, Dripping Springs. They have a wide receiver, Cameron O'Bannon, who is actually committed to play baseball at UT in the future. This guy caught 409 yards worth of passes in his last game and 6 touchdowns. He's 3rd in the state for yards per game in receiving and 1st in the state for receiving touchdowns. So Dripping Springs might make some noise, especially if they get the right matchup with O'Bannon on the outside.
And, Jeff, you talk about Cedar Park. They're matched up in the same district as Manville, number 4 and number 5 in the state. That is your likely, anyway, regional final. Whoever comes out of that is certainly going to be dangerous heading to the state semifinals. Meanwhile, here in DFW, whoever comes out of Region 2 will be certifiably battle-tested. There are so many good teams in this region. Denton Ryan, Lancaster, Highland Park, on and on and on. Magnolia, Frisco Lone Star, who was state ranked all season long. Denton Ryan, though, if somebody beats Denton Ryan this season, I don't know how it's going to happen. This team is absolutely loaded. 7 kids on their defense alone who are rated recruits headed to play Division I football. Jatavian Sanders is the best public school football player in Texas, and Billy Bowman is right behind him. Seth Hennigan runs the show. They've got athletes everywhere. All due respect to every other team across the state, I'll go ahead and say it right now. Denton Ryan's winning state in 5A Division I. Highland Park is a team that certainly has a chance to knock them off. Number 2 in the state. They're fantastic. They've been kind of under the radar somehow. If a team ranked 2nd in the state can be under the radar, but blew out Rockwall earlier this year, a good 6A team. And then my dark horse is actually out of Region 1. Colleyville Heritage got fortunate to avoid Region 2. They're in Region 1, the number 10 team in the state, and I think they could maybe make a little bit of noise in that region as well. I've already kind of laid it out there. I think Denton Ryan's winning state in 5AD1. Where are you guys falling on this? Joe, we'll go to you first. Joe Reinigle.
Denton Ryan. I mean, it's hands down. There's nobody else has got a chance.
Well,
I'm with you. How about you, Matt Musil?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. The one team that would have a shot is Manville. Manville, we're talking about all these great teams in 5A. And so far, we haven't even got to 6A. Well, Manville is not undefeated. Most of these teams we're talking about are undefeated. Oh, by the way, who did Manville lose to? North Shore out of 6A. So that's the only loss they have. So if there is someone that could challenge, I think it'll be Manville.
You could have worse losses. How about you, Jeff Jones? Who's your state champ in 5A D1?
Because of how well Cedar Park has played, and because they're the local guys, I want to say Cedar Park, but instead I'm going to whisper Denton Ryan. Back to
you. So we got about 3.5 Denton Ryans. I think that's probably right about on the money, because they are. It's crazy how talented that team really is. Anybody who saw Jatavian Sanders catch the other night against Frisco Lone Star, that kid is just out of this world. We've kind of hit the midway point of the show real quick, and we want to make sure to deliver a message just kind of about high school football in general. We've been fortunate to get through this entire regular season. We've been fortunate to get to the playoffs. Please, if you're going to be going to these games, do it safely. Wear a mask, socially distance, follow those UIL guidelines, those CDC guidelines. Do this the right way, the safe way, because that's the only way we're going to get here to AT&T Stadium in a little over a month's time, is if everybody continues to do this the right way. And if you can, there's a lot of ways to stream these games on television. We streamed games all year long here at WFAA. There are streaming services all across the state. Please, if you can, stay home. It's just the smart way to go. Speaking of getting here to AT&T Stadium, it is almost that time for a lot of teams from 4A on down, and that brings us to Curtis Quillen from KCEN. Curtis, we got state semifinals across the state in 2A through 4A. State championship games are already set for the 6-man teams in 1A Division 1 and Division 2. Let's start in 4A D1. Number 1 Argyle is probably the favorite, but what do you think about 4A?
I agree with you. Good to see you, Mike. I think Argyle is the clear favorite here. Canyon is really good. Canyon has 5 shutouts this season, but there are no offenses in West Texas as dynamic as Argyle is. You look at Argyle, 77 points in week 8, 56 week 10, 79 in the bi-district round of the playoffs. And in the regional final, a 41-point performance against a really good, really physical Paris team. The Eagles averaging almost 50 points a game. Have not scored below 28. I like Argyle coming out of the left side of the bracket. You look at the right side, and I think this one comes down to consistency. You've got Austin LBJ, the only UIL small school still standing with less than 10 wins so far this season, because the Jaguars did not debut until September 25th, but they are the definition of consistency on that side of the bracket. Lindale a little all over the place defensively against some really good teams. LBJ is 8-0 when scoring over 20 points. I like Argyle over the Jaguars from Austin LBJ in the 4A Division 1 state title game.
4A Division 2, Graham and Gilmer on one side of the bracket, Carthage and Wimberley on the other side. How do you see 4A D2 shaking out?
You look at this, Graham and Gilmer is going to be a matchup of 2 really similar teams. Graham is on a tear, a 10-game win streak after that week 2 loss to Springtown, a semifinalist in 4A Division 1 a year ago. Graham has allowed 14 points or less in 8 games, and Graham is a 2-point favorite in the computers. But then you look at Gilmer, that one loss in the non-district finale to the preseason favorite in the reigning Division 1 state champ Carthage. Gilmer has scored 50 or more 6 times, 40 or more 8 times, and allowed 14 or less 6 times in 14 games. I'm going to take Gilmer out of the left side of the bracket, and then on the right side, you've got Wimberley, the reigning Division II state runner-up, against Carthage, the team we thought would be at this point, the team we thought would win the state title when it started. Carthage has only allowed 10 points or more in 4 games this season, one of those last week, the only time in the playoffs that they've done so against China Spring, 52-14 in the Region 3 final. It's an 18-point spread for the Bulldogs. Give me an all East Texas final, and I'm not going to bet against Scott Surratt when he's got Carthage in a state title game.
3A Division 1, Jim Ned's pulled a couple upsets to get to this point against Art Briles' Mount Vernon Club, and then Hallettsville and Lano on the other side of the bracket.
Yeah, on the left side, Mount Vernon and Jim Ned both have pulled upsets to get to this point. You've got Mount Vernon as the only number 4 seed still standing in the UIL small school ranks. They were there because of tiebreakers. a really good offense led by former Baylor coach Art Briles. Jim Ned, or rather Mount Vernon, looks like almost the team of destiny at this point, but Jim Ned, a win over Brock 2 weeks ago, a stud performance last week in the regional final. I'm going to ride the hot hand here, though. Mount Vernon does appear to be the team of destiny. It's playing like a really solid ball club. I'm going to take Mount Vernon out of the left side of the bracket. On the right side, Hallettsville and Llano. This one really comes down to how much weight do you put in what one player can do for one team. If you think Jonathan Brooks can carry Hallettsville on his back single-handedly to a state championship game, then you have to take Hallettsville. Brooks, in the regional semifinal against Lorena from right outside Waco, 27 carries, 18 yards per carry, 9 touchdowns. And then last week, a little less. Same number of carries, 26 carries, 192 yards, 1 rushing touchdown, and a punt return touchdown. But Hallettsville was still able to beat Columbus, even with that kind of line, which is solid, but not the eye-opening, your eyes pop out of your head line he had against Lorena. Is still able to win. Give me Hallettsville over Llano, and then I'm gonna take Hallettsville to win the state title.
All right, 3A Division II, number 1 versus number 2 on one side of the bracket, Canadian and Gunner. That should be an awful lot of fun.
It is, and it's the 5th year in a row these two teams have played, but Canadian, not only out for revenge, has been the most dominant team in 3A Division II this season, which is saying something because Gunner has been impressive. So this is going to be an unpopular decision in North Texas. I'm going to take Canadian to beat Gunner. Then on the right side, Wascom and Franklin, a rematch of the 22 3A Division II state title game. Franklin is extremely consistent, an 11-game win streak after an 0-2 start to the season with losses to Division I Lorena and Cameron Yo. Only 4 in that span, 4 games allowing 14 points or less. Franklin over Wascom in the other semifinal. I'm taking Canadian to win 3A Division II, though.
All right, Curtis, we're running a little bit low on time, so give me your state champs from here on out. 2A Division I, number 3 Post versus number 7 Crawford on one side. Timpson versus Shiner, number 4 and number 1 on the other side. Who's your 2A Division I state champ?
I'm taking Shiner over Post. Both of these teams have been dominant all season, and I don't think that changes now.
2A Division II, number 3 Wellington, number 4 Windthorst on one side, number 1 Mart, and number 9 Falls City on the other side of the bracket. Who's your 2A D2 state champ?
Mart won a state title with nothing but sophomores a year ago. I don't see that changing. This Mart team is impressive with wins over 3A ball clubs, and they're just murdering all the 2A teams they play. Give me Mart over Wellington in the 2A Division II state title game.
And in the 6-man ranks, they've already got their state championship set. They're just hanging out, waiting to come here to AT&T Stadium. 1A D1 is number 1 Sterling City against number 4 May. And in 1A Division II, Balmorhea and Richland Springs. Richland Springs going for a 10th state championship.
Yeah, and Richland Springs, starting in the Division II ranks, is really, really good, but so is this Balmorhea team. Vance Jones has this ball club rolling. They have not lost to a Division II opponent all year. Neither has Richland Springs, though, but Balmorhea with the tougher path to AT&T. I'm taking the Bears to win Division II. And in the Division I title game, Sterling City has beat May once this season and has had the tougher path to AT&T Stadium. I think that helps Sterling City here. I think Sterling City is going to win 1A Division I.
Curtis Quillen from KCEN, our small school man, all over it. Curtis, thanks so much for the time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
All right, let's bring back in Matt Musil, Joe Reinigal, and Jeff Jones as we get into 6A now, fellas. 6A Division II, talent across the board, but certainly more wide open than Division I. Only a few of these state-ranked teams are in this Division II bracket. Number 7, Bridgeland. Number 9, Cedar Hill. Number 8, I should say, Cedar Hill. And number 9, Katy. The only 3 top 10 teams in the state in this 6A Division II bracket. Let's go to Houston first, Matt Musil. How do you see 6A Division II shaking out down south?
Well, things changed when Friday night when Seven Lakes won their game, so that pushed Katy back into Division II. So all of a sudden, wow, Division II is just they have so much talent there, so many talented teams in the Houston area. This is a rare thing, Mike, that Katy is in a particular region, and I'm not going to pick them to win it. I'm going to pick Bridgeland. The Bridgeland Bears under head coach David Raffield. They have not been around very long, but they do a tremendous job at Bridgeland, one of the new developments out on the northwest side. And the Bears are undefeated. They've had a tremendous season. And they have not only an experienced head coach. David used to coach at Cy Falls before he went over and coached at Bryan High School. But Connor Wegman is his quarterback, and Connor's had a heck of a season. I picked the Bridgeland Bears. Now, Katy is my number 2 pick because Coach Gary Joseph, he has a stable of running backs. This is Jalen Davis. And it's just year after year after year, Coach Joseph has great running backs out there, even though he had one of his top players opt out, decided not to play this season because of all the COVID issues, and he's got a tremendous quarterback in Caleb Kroger. So if Bridgeland isn't there, I'm going with Katy. And then my dark horse, well, we have a couple of dark horses here. My first dark horse is Tomball Memorial. I heard Joe talking about a team in the San Antonio area averaging over 50 points a game. Through the first 5 games of the season, Tomball Memorial was averaging over 60 points a game. They wound up averaging over 50 a game. Unbelievable offense of these guys. They might just outscore everybody and get all the way to the region final. And the other black horse I have is Shadow Creek. They're the defending 5A state champs, moved up to Class 6A this year. They'll be a tough out also, but I'm going to say Bridgeland, I think, is the class of 6A Division II down here, Mike.
Yeah, Matt, you talk about Tomball Memorial and how talented their offense is. They had their quarterback, Colton Marwill, not able to play a game. Their wide receiver, Joseph Manjack, played and scored 7 touchdowns, 5 rushing, 2 throwing. They can put up points. It doesn't matter who's on the field. So, yeah, Tomball is a little dangerous up there in Region 4.
Manjack
How about down in
Manjack is a manimal.
No doubt. Down in San Antonio, Joe, Brennan looks to have a fairly clear path to the regional final anyway. How do you see things shaking out down there?
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm going to go with my number 1 team is the Judson Rockets. You know, they were in Division I last year, Division II this year. And, you know, they had a really bad loss to DeSoto week 1. It was 37-0. They got killed against DeSoto. But since then, they reeled off 6 straight. They lost last week to a Smithson Valley team desperate to make the playoffs. But here's what makes this team special. They run the football. They average 273 yards on the ground. It's incredible. DeAnthony Lewis is the man, averaging 10 yards a carry. But Michael Burrows is their quarterback. He can throw it when necessary, but he can also run as well. So I like the Judson Rockets. And then, Mike, will go to the Brennan Bears. They have been solid as well. Had a hiccup early on in the season, but they are a balanced attack, and they're doing a great job. They can throw the football, they can run the football, and their quarterback is Ashton DuBose, and he is just as solid as can be. Doesn't turn the football over, and he plays like a senior, although he's only a sophomore. So I like this team as well, and like you say, they may have the easier path. My dark horse team coming out is the Johnson Jaguars. Everybody thought around here that they were going to be the class of their district, of this city, because they just started out really hot, but then they faded down the stretch. But they've still got some talent, and I like them as the dark horse coming out of this region.
All right, now we head to Austin. Jeff Jones from KVU. Jeff, how do you see things shaking out down your way? You got the Vandegrift team that's really good, and their 2 losses are really good losses.
Yeah, they really are. They really are. And Vandegrift has been really good for the past 3 seasons. As you mentioned, they come into the playoffs with 2 losses, so they're 6-2, and this is a down year for them. They've gone undefeated the past 2 regular seasons, but even at 6-2, their defense only gives up 11 points per game. So what they do well is play D and keep everybody else from scoring, and typically that's enough to win. We'll see how that does for them in the playoffs. I like this team. What I don't like, though, is their path. They would open the playoffs against an Austin High team that's led by UT commit Charles Wright at quarterback, and Austin High is playing with some extra passion or energy or emotion. They haven't won a playoff game since 1957, so you know they see a Vandegrift team that might be a little down, and they think this could be their year to snap that streak. If Vandegrift gets by the first round by Austin High, then they'll play a team that Joe just mentioned, Judson. So I just don't know how far Vandegrift can go this year, but I do like what I've seen from them so far. I also like what I've seen from another team in that division, and that is Vista Ridge. You know, Vista Ridge returns their quarterback from last year, Kyle Brown, who was an all-state guy last year. He's not putting up those kinds of numbers this year, but you know he's just a guy who's been there, done that before, Mike. So when you have that experience, that calm confidence at that position, well, you always have a chance. And speaking of having a chance, I think it's time to move on to my dark horse. And in this 6A Division II, I'm going to say our dark horse from Central Texas is Hayes High School out of Buda, Texas. Hayes has 3 losses. And so if you look at that record, you might, turn your head and say, how far can these guys go? Well, 2 of those losses are to Austin Westlake and to where I'm standing right now, Lake Travis High School here in Austin as well. Those are 2 excellent losses, and their 3rd loss was a season opening loss to Vista Ridge. Well, Hayes gets Vista Ridge again to open the playoffs. If Hayes has gotten better and progressed like I think they have over the season, they might shock Vista Ridge, and then they'll play another team that Joe just mentioned, Johnson High School out of San Antonio. So we'll see. I don't think it's Austin's strongest division, but we do have some players in there.
Yeah, Buda Hayes, you mentioned they've got 2 really good losses in Westlake and Lake Travis. The concerning part is that they're both by substantial margins, so you do wonder, okay, how deep can they go realistically? But like you said, maybe not the strongest part of the state for Austin, but still some good football teams for sure. Up here in DFW, the 2 regions, Region 1 and Region 2, have their own clear-cut favorite. Number 8, Cedar Hill, led by Caden Salter, who, for my money, is the best senior quarterback in the state of Texas. Kid is fantastic. Lit DeSoto up like there was no tomorrow, and that's a good DeSoto defense. He scored 6 touchdowns against them. Their defense is strong as well, led by Charles Esters and Jaheim Lowe. Kevin Young, their running back, is really, really strong, and speed to spare. So Cedar Hill, I think, is it's certainly the favorite to come out of Region 2. Denton Geyer, number 13 in the state, the favorite to come out of Region 1, especially since Flower Mound Marcus quarterback Garrett Nussmeyer might not play in the postseason. It's a big question mark coming into the postseason. So not having the number 12 team in the state, having their starting quarterback possibly only makes Denton Geyer's path that much easier. And my dark horse from this area is in Region 1 as well. Prosper, a team that gave Allen and Denton Geyer major fits during the regular season, played fantastic games with both of those 2 teams. They could potentially beat Flower Mound Marcus even if Nussmeyer plays, and without him, I think they definitely move on to the second round, and I think you could see Prosper versus Denton Geyer later on in the playoffs in Region 1. All right, let's put a bow on 6A Division 2. Who's your state championship? Matt Musil, I'll come back to you down in Houston.
I'm staying local, of course, Bridgeland.
All right, Musil staying on the homer path. How about you, Jeff Jones? Who do you got?
I love that pick. Bridgeland High School has my old high school head coach. Dave Ratfield was my head coach when I was at Cy Falls as a stud high school safety. I say that because I trust you guys aren't going to check the film, so I hope Coach Ratfield gets a state championship this year.
You guys. I got to disagree with both of you because I'm going to go with the Katy Tigers because I just think the tradition that they have in the playoffs, the running game that Matt talked about, these guys always perform well in the playoffs. I'm going with Katy.
That's a good pick.
Yeah, I have a hard time disagreeing with Katy. I think Katy definitely gets there. I think they're here at AT&T Stadium. I'm looking forward to Cedar Hill versus Katy in the state title game, and then I'll roll on the homer train too. Why not? And I'll go with the Longhorns to win their 4th state championship. All right, let's get to the big boys as we're running out of time, fellas. We got to get to 6A Division 1, where we've seen North Shore top Duncanville in each of the last 2 years. Matt Musil, you guys have the clear-cut favorite in number 1 North Shore. Take us through how Region 4 looks for you guys down there in 6A Division 1.
Well, that's the thing. If you're the clear-cut number 1, is that a blessing or a curse? And we will find out for the Mustangs. I'll tell you, John Kay is reloaded. Demetrius Davis, the quarterback, is spectacular. He's headed to Auburn. He has another great playmaker on the team. Shadrach Banks is a top playmaker, but head coach John Kay doing a great job at North Shore. Once again, they should come out of Region 3. And out of the other region is my number 2 pick, Klein Kane. Klein Kane, not so well known on a statewide basis, but they've had some solid football teams, and they have a really good quarterback this year in Carson Roper. Klein Kane is my number 2 pick. And then my dark horse, Mike, I really scratched my head on this because we've got Dawson. Dawson is Division 1. They're undefeated. Katie Tompkins, who beat Katy Tompkins is undefeated. They could be a dark horse too, but my dark horse is going to be Cy-Fair. They have a great running back. This kid looks like he's not only going to run at the collegiate level, he'll be running the football on Sundays. I'm going to go with Cy-Fair. They won a state championship a few years ago with great defense and a strong running game. They've got a new head coach in Jeff Miller. He used to play quarterback at Cy-Fair back in the day, and I'm picking Cy-Fair as my dark horse.
Cy-Fair, Matt, has a remarkably difficult path, though. They're going to have to go through, most likely anyway, Katy Tompkins and North Shore if they want to make a deep run. It doesn't get much more difficult than that. Now down to San Antonio, Joe Reinigle. Who do you think is coming out of Region 4? Reagan looks like maybe a pretty good football team.
Yeah, the San Antonio Reagan Rattlers are rolling right now, and there's one reason for that. A guy by the name of Carson Green, their running back. He's only a sophomore, but this kid is about as hard to tackle as anybody I've ever seen. He's incredible, and when they stack the line, when defenses stack the line against him, they got a pretty good quarterback in Britton Moore who can carry the load there either with his arm or with his feet as well. They play well and averaging over 360 yards a ball game offensively. So I like the Reagan Rattlers to come out of there. And when you talk high school football around these parts, you got to talk about the Cibolo Steel Knights. Those guys are in the playoffs year in and year out. And they started out horribly. They were 0-2 to start the season this year, but then they reeled off some wins and finally got their feet underneath them. They got a quarterback by the name of Wyatt Beagle, who is just one of those kind of guys that's never going to be flashy and never going to do anything spectacular, but he doesn't make any mistakes. And that's a key for this team, and that has really been something that they've done. My dark horse is San Antonio Madison. You know, Madison, they've got so many athletes. They've got speed galore. They just haven't really seemed to pull it all together all the time. When they play well, they play well. When they don't, they don't. So if they can find a way to put it together, they may make some noise in the playoffs.
And Madison has to play Steele in the first round, so whoever comes out of that might have the opportunity to make a little bit of a run. Down to Austin is where we've got the real fight in Region 4, Jeff Jones, a game that we kind of got robbed of during the regular season, Austin Westlake and Lake Travis. Everybody's just pointing to that one, right?
It's the number one storyline that people are talking about here. It's the number one storyline I'm looking forward to. You know, COVID-19 has changed everything in the world, not just the world of sports this year, but one thing that it unfortunately changed, it took the Battle of the Lakes from us. Westlake, Lake Travis, we didn't get to see it in the regular season. We expect both of those teams will progress to the fourth round of the playoffs where we'll get to see them battle each other. Of course, those are my two teams that I think will come out of this 6A Division I from Central Texas, the Austin and surrounding areas. Let's start by talking about Westlake. Those guys are the reigning champs. Sure, North Shore won D1 last year, but Westlake won D2, and they looked great while doing it. You know, they've had a new quarterback in, but he's a Division I guy who already has big-time SEC, Big 12, Pac-10 offers. They have Division I talent at running back, Division I talent at wide receiver. And check this out, they're 8-0, and they pitched 5 shutouts. In the 3 games that they didn't pitch shutouts, they allowed 6 or 7 points. That's it. So the Westlake defense is very good, and their offense, like I just said, has D1 players at every skill position. Those guys are going to go far. I'm not going to ruin my pick, but I think we're going to be watching Westlake play for quite a while. Lake Travis will also go far and do well. There's something about just knowing your winning tradition. And I don't know if you guys can see it, but behind me there are 6 plaques on a wall back here representing the 6 state championships that have been won here for Lake Travis. These guys know the tradition of the school. They know they can win. And this year they've proven that they have depth, so that'll treat them well. My dark horse here are the Round Rock Dragons. Not only do they have one of my favorite mascots in all of Texas, because dragons are awesome, but they also have one of my favorite players to watch in all of Texas, and that's running back Israel Morgan. This guy is 3rd in the state in rushing yards per game. He's 1st in the state in rushing touchdowns with 20. Actually, no, that's not true. He's not 1st in the state in rushing touchdowns, but he is very high up there. He ran for almost 500 yards in his last game of his regular season, and I expect him to run through a couple of people in the playoffs. Because of the way the schedule shakes out, Israel and the guys from Round Rock are going to see Lake Travis in the first round, so I don't even know if they're going to make it past the first round, but if they can figure out a way to do that, I think a lot of people are in trouble.
All right, meanwhile, up here in DFW, again, split into Region 1 and Region 2, which makes things a little bit easier to decipher. Of course, there's Duncanville, number 2 in the state. You figure they'll come out of their region. Number 4, Allen. if a team that could be ranked number 4 in the state and be the Allen Eagles could fly under the radar, I feel like Allen kind of has done so far this year. But they are fantastic. I saw them dominate Denton Guyer earlier this year. I think both of those two teams, Duncanville and Allen, make their way out of their respective regions. My dark horse in this area, if a nationally ranked team can be a dark horse, number 11 in the state, DeSoto, number 24 in the country in Max Prep's rankings, I think is probably the dark horse up here in 6A Division I. And I think the biggest reason why is their path. If they're going to win a state championship, likely they would have to beat 5 state-ranked teams in order to do so. The only game that wouldn't be against a state-ranked opponent would be their first-round game. Other than that, all the way through, they'd have to beat state-ranked teams in order to win a state championship, so a tall task for Claude Mathis's club, for sure. All right, fellas, let's put a bow on this whole thing. Who is your 6A Division I state champion? Matt Musil, I'll come to you in Houston. I have a feeling I know where you're going here.
Well, Mike, you make a good point. All it takes is one big upset, and then maybe that region opens up. So that's why we're picking. We have number 2 picks and dark horses. I'm going to go North Shore, but my sentimental favorite is Westlake. That's where my grandson will go when he gets old enough to get up there. It's like high school. I have a feeling one of us may pick Westlake in this group, but got to go North Shore. The Mustangs are strong. They've been strong the last 2 seasons, and they're strong despite COVID-19 in 2020. I'm going North Shore Mustangs all the way.
All right, Jeff Jones, how about you?
Yeah, Matt just alluded to it. Somebody's going to pick Westlake. I'm going with the local guys. Matt, you said you have a grandson who's going to play there. Go ahead and pitch the feature story for me. I got my notes segment out right here. So just let me know the feature story. We'll go ahead and get that Westlake State Championship of 2032 or whatever he is started right now. But I think Westlake's going to win it.
Will do.
Joe Reinigle, who's your 6A D1 state champ?
Yeah, it'd be easy to go with either one of those, North Shore, Westlake. Those are easy picks, guys, all right? But I'm going to stay local because I've kind of gone out of the area. I really like this San Antonio Reagan team, guys. I really do. They can run the football. They can throw it. Their defense is solid. If they can get past a tough first-round matchup against Smithson Valley, I think they've got a real chance to make some noise. So I'm going to stay local and go with the Reagan Rattlers.
For once, I'm not going to go with a local team. I don't think that Duncanville is quite as good this year as they've been the last couple of years. I think if Jaquin and Jackson were healthy last year, they may have beaten North Shore in that rematch. But I don't think they're quite as good this year. I think Allen actually nips them in the state semifinals. And I'm sorry, I got to go with North Shore to win a 3rd straight. They played a tune-up game against the number 20 team in the state of Tascasita late in November and ripped them limb from limb. It wasn't remotely close. North Shore is a monster, and I just don't see how they don't go win a 3rd straight 6A Division I state championship. With that, we're going to put this one in the books. Our thanks to the entire crew, Joe Reinigle, Matt Musil, and Jeff Jones. Curtis Quillen from KCEN down in Waco joining us for a little bit to talk about the small schools as well. It is playoff time in Texas. We hope you guys are ready after the last 45 minutes. We certainly are as well. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you guys very soon on all your local stations as we cover the Texas High School Football Playoffs.
Muted.